I still remember the first Christmas I wasn't invited to. It wasn't a big fight, no dramatic showdown, just silence. No call, no message, no invitation. I was 28 then, freshly married, and I told myself it must have been some mistake, some oversight. But when I called my mother, her voice was cool, rehearsed. "Oh, we thought you'd be busy with Daniel. It's not a big deal." But it was a big deal. It was the start of 12 years of absence. 12 years of birthdays celebrated without me, weddings, where my name wasn't even on the guest list, dinners, where my seat was left empty, not because they missed me, but because they wanted me erased. I am 40 now. Saying that out loud feels like admitting I've walked through fire and only now stopped to notice the burns on my skin. For years I told myself I didn't care. I built walls, I worked hard. I poured myself into a marriage that turned out to be more of a cage than a home. And when that cage finally shattered, when Daniel's betrayal left me gutted and hollow, I realized how alone I truly was. My family never reached for me. Not once. No call to check in, no arm around my shoulders, no "we miss you." The silence between us grew into a canyon so wide I stopped trying to cross it. I learned to live with the ache, the constant reminder that the people who were supposed to be my roots had decided I was expendable. And yet 2 months ago, something happened that I still can't fully explain. Out of nowhere, my phone lit up with messages from my sister, my brother, even my mother. After 12 years of nothing, they wanted to see me. They said they missed me, that they had been wrong, that family was too important to throw away. At first, I didn't reply. I stared at the messages, my heart pounding my hands, trembling with a mixture of longing and rage. Because part of me wanted so badly to believe them, to finally feel like I belonged again. But another part of me, the part that remembered every lonely Christmas, every tearful birthday, knew there had to be more to the story. It wasn't until my sister sent the last message that everything clicked. "We'd love to come over. We heard you bought a new place. Can we see it?" That was the truth buried beneath their sudden warmth. Not love, not regret, but curiosity, greed. I had spent years working in silence, clawing my way out of Daniel's wreckage, building something from the ashes of my old life. My house, my business, my new beginning. These were things I had earned alone. And now suddenly they remembered I existed. I told them yes. I invited them. Not because I forgave them, but because a part of me wanted to see it through. To look them in the eyes and finally face the ghosts that had haunted me for more than a decade. The day they arrived, my stomach was in knots. I stood in the doorway of my new house, this house I had designed, with my own hands, every corner, a testament to my survival, and watched their cars pull into the driveway. One by one they stepped out. My mother, older now, but still carrying herself with that same sharp pride. My sister dressed in clothes that screamed of status, but couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. My brother, his arm draped around a woman I didn't know his smile forced. They looked at my house the way vultures look at carrion, admiring, appraising, calculating. Not one of them hugged me right away. Not one of them said, "I'm sorry." Instead, my mother's first words were, "Well, you've done well for yourself." I forced a smile, though inside I was trembling with the weight of every year I had spent aching for them. "Yes," I said softly. "I have." We walked inside together, their eyes darting from the high ceilings to the polished floors to the framed photographs of me standing alone in places they had never bothered to see. And as they moved through my home, I realized something that made my chest tighten. I wasn't the one who had been missing out all these years. They were. Because while I had suffered, yes, I had also grown. I had found strength in solitude, purpose, in pain, resilience in rejection. And now, as they circled my living room with thinly veiled envy, I felt something I hadn't in a long time control. I didn't know then exactly how the evening would unfold. I didn't know what truths would rise to the surface, what wounds would be reopened, what secrets would come clawing out of the dark. But I knew they had come into my world now, and I was no longer the girl who begged for a seat at their table. They were sitting at mine. The sound of their voices filled my home, a sound I had once ached for, but now it felt foreign, like strangers trying to play the role of family. My sister strolled into the kitchen and ran her hand across the marble countertop as though she was in a showroom, not her own sibling's house. It must have cost a fortune, she said, her voice dripping with curiosity more than admiration. My brother whistled low as he peeked out the glass doors leading to the patio. Nice view. You really did well for yourself. And my mother, who had always carried judgment like perfume, walked slowly through the living room. Eyes, narrowed lips, pressed tight, as if she was searching for something to criticize, but couldn't quite find it. It's impressive, she finally said, and in her mouth the word sounded more like a reluctant concession than praise. I poured wine into glasses, my hands steady, though my heart raced. I wanted to scream, to ask them where they had been all those years I had cried alone. I wanted to shove the glasses into their hands and say, "Drink and taste the bitterness you left me with." But instead, I smiled, faintly played the hostess, and sat with them as though this were any other family gathering. They talked at first about small things, jobs, children, neighbors, the rising cost of everything. My sister mentioned her husband's business struggles, carefully weaving in complaints about their mortgage. My brother laughed about how expensive his kids' tuition had become. My mother said she'd been worried about her retirement. Each sentence was a carefully placed seed, a reminder of their burdens, their needs. And all the while, their eyes flickered to the wealth around them, to the life I had built. I said little. I listened. I let the silence stretch between their words until it became uncomfortable. Because the truth was, they weren't here to reconcile. They weren't here to apologize. They were here because they saw me as a resource, a safety net they had abandoned, but now wanted to reclaim. And then, as if she couldn't hold it in any longer, my sister finally said it. You know, it really would be nice if we could do more family gatherings here. You have the space, the atmosphere. It just feels right. My chest tightened, but not from joy. It was rage, pure and sharp. Because 12 years ago, I would have given anything to host them, to be included, to feel like part of the family. And now, when the years of exclusion had carved scars so deep, I still bled from them. They wanted to waltz back in, as though nothing had happened. I set my glass down and looked at them, really looked at them. My mother's calculating eyes, my sister's expectant smile, my brother's nervous glance. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the abandoned daughter or the forgotten sibling. I felt like the one holding the cards. Do you know, I said softly, that for 12 years I waited for an invitation? Just one. To a birthday, to Christmas, to dinner. And for 12 years, nothing came. I told myself you'd call, that maybe it was an oversight. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't wanted. My words fell heavy in the air. My sister shifted uncomfortably. My brother cleared his throat, and my mother stiffened. That's not fair, she said quickly. We thought you needed space. You were always so difficult after you married Daniel. I laughed bitterly. Space, no. You cut me out. Don't dress it up as kindness. The truth I had carried for years burst out like a dam breaking. I told them about the nights I cried on the floor because I had no one to call. The birthdays I spent blowing out candles alone. The time Daniel shattered my trust, and I had no family to lean on. I poured every drop of grief, rage, and betrayal into the open air, my voice shaking, my hands trembling, but my heart finally lighter. They tried to interrupt, to excuse, to justify, but I didn't let them. Not anymore. By the time I fell silent, their faces were pale, their glasses untouched. And in the silence that followed, I saw it clearly. They weren't sorry. Not really. They were uncomfortable, caught, maybe even embarrassed, but not sorry. And yet in that moment, something shifted in me. For so long, I had believed I needed their love to feel whole. But seeing them there fumbling, exposed, and powerless in the home I had built without them, I realized the truth. I didn't need their approval. I never had, but they needed me now. And that realization lit a flame inside me that would soon grow into something far more dangerous than grief. Because for the first time, I had the chance not just to face them, but to make them feel what I had felt. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly beneath me, and studied their faces as if they were strangers I had only just met. My sister twisted the stem of her wineglass, her lips pressed into a line. My brother tapped his fingers against the table, avoiding my gaze. My mother sat stiffly, her back ramrod straight, her expression unreadable except for the faint twitch at the corner of her mouth. For a moment, I wondered if I was cruel, if dragging all those memories into the open was just my way of punishing them. But then I remembered the hollow ache of those years, the endless silence on holidays, the way I used to set an extra plate at my own table, foolishly pretending they might show up. I remembered begging Daniel to call them to make them see me, and how his laughter cut me deeper than their absence ever did. No, I wasn't cruel. I was honest. Finally. I've carried those wounds for 12 years, I said, my voice steadier now. And I'm not saying this because I want pity. I don't need pity. I want acknowledgement. I want you to understand what you did. My sister was the first to speak. We didn't think it mattered that much. Didn't matter, I snapped, slamming my palm against the table. The sound echoed through the room. It mattered enough to shape my entire life. It mattered enough to teach me never to rely on anyone but myself. It mattered so much that it turned me into someone who doesn't trust love, who doesn't believe in family, who had to bleed alone while the people who should have been there turned their backs. Her mouth snapped shut and she lowered her eyes. My brother muttered something about not wanting drama, but his voice trailed off when I glared at him. And then my mother spoke. Her tone was cold, sharp, the way it had been when I was a child caught doing something wrong. You've made quite a life for yourself. Clearly you survived, so why drag this up now? Why dwell on the past when we're here, aren't we? I stared at her, stunned at the audacity. Then I laughed, a low, bitter sound that made even me shiver. Because survival isn't the same as living? Because you don't get to erase 12 years with one dinner? And because you're not here for me. You're here for what I have. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. And in it, I saw the flicker of truth on their faces. My sister's guilt, my brother's discomfort, my mother's thinly veiled greed. They hadn't come because they missed me. They hadn't come because they loved me. They had come because they smelled opportunity, and they thought I was still desperate enough for family to give it. And that was when the idea formed in my mind, dark, intoxicating, irresistible. If they wanted something from me, I would give it to them, but on my terms. So I softened my expression, let my voice slip into something gentler. You're right. Maybe it's time we moved past the past. Maybe this is a second chance. I watched relief flood my sister's face, watched my brother's shoulders relax, watched my mother finally smile. They thought I had surrendered, that my need for them outweighed my pain. They didn't know me anymore.
Not really.
Because what I felt wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Over the next few weeks, I let them in. I invited them to dinners, introduced them to my neighbors, let them bask in the glow of my success. I smiled when my mother complimented the house as if it were hers. I listened when my sister spoke of her financial struggles, nodding with sympathetic eyes. I laughed at my brother's stories, pretending not to notice how he glanced around, calculating the value of my belongings. And all the while, I was taking notes. Quietly, carefully, I was gathering every little crack in their lives. My sister's crumbling marriage, my brother's debt, my mother's fear of aging alone. I let them trust me, let them lean on me, let them believe I was their safety net. But inside, I was weaving a plan to show them that betrayal cuts both ways, because they had taught me long ago how it feels to be abandoned, to be left with nothing but emptiness. Now it was my turn to teach them. The more time they spent around me, the more I realized just how fragile their facades were. My sister, who once mocked me for being too soft, now cried at my kitchen island about her husband's late nights and suspicious phone calls. She gripped her glass of wine like it was the only thing keeping her upright, her words spilling out in a slurry confession of jealousy and regret. My brother, the one who used to boast about his brilliance in business, confessed after his third whiskey that he was drowning in debt. Creditors were circling him like vultures, and he had no way out. And my mother? Oh, my mother! She pretended to be the unshakable matriarch, but one look at the way she clutched my wrist when I mentioned retirement homes told me everything. She was terrified of being discarded, of ending her life as forgotten as she had left me. I listened. I nodded. I comforted. But inside, I felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. For the first time in years, they needed me. And not in some small, superficial way. They needed me in the ways that mattered, in ways that could destroy them, if I decided to turn away just as they had done to me. It was intoxicating, the power. One night after another dinner, where my mother fawned over my cooking, and my brother joked about moving into my guest house, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. I almost didn't recognize the woman I saw. My 34-year-old face carried the same high cheekbones and brown eyes I'd always had, but there was a hardness now, an edge sharpened by 12 years of abandonment. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who cried herself to sleep on Christmas Eve, the one who pretended birthdays didn't matter, the one who begged for scraps of attention, and I realized she was gone. In her place stood someone else, someone who had learned how to survive, someone who had learned how to strike back. So I started planting seeds, small ones at first, so subtle they didn't notice. To my sister, I whispered doubt about her husband's late nights, casually mentioning that I'd seen him at a restaurant with someone else. To my brother, I suggested that maybe the only way out of his financial mess was to liquidate what little he had left his home, his business, just to stop the bleeding. To my mother, I hinted at how quickly people age when they're alone, how much safer and easier life is when surrounded by family who truly care. Each suggestion was laced with poison, though they didn't realize it. And slowly, inevitably, they started unraveling. My sister began obsessively checking her husband's phone, showing up at his office unannounced, accusing him of lies both real and imagined. My brother started selling off assets, convincing himself he was taking control, when really he was just digging himself deeper into despair. My mother, desperate to secure her place in my life, began showering me with flattery, even apologizing for the years of absence, though I could tell the words tasted bitter in her mouth. They thought I was their savior. They thought I was their anchor. But what I had become was the storm. And yet, even as I orchestrated their slow collapse, there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the city hummed outside my window, I would ask myself if I was becoming the very thing I hated. Was I turning into my mother, who had always wielded control through manipulation and silence? Was I letting bitterness define me, hollow me out, until there was nothing left but revenge? But then I would remember the hollow ache of those 12 years. The empty phone calls, the unanswered texts, the way holidays turned into reminders of everything I'd lost. And the doubt would vanish, replaced by a clarity so sharp, it nearly blinded me. They had taught me abandonment. I was teaching them consequence. The climax came faster than I expected. It was a family dinner at my house, one of many I had begun hosting, always making sure they left with the illusion that we were a happy, reunited family. That night, I poured wine, served roast chicken, smiled like the perfect hostess. But beneath the surface, everything was about to shatter. Because that was the night my sister's husband showed up furious and red-faced, demanding to know why she had been stalking him. That was the night my brother got a phone call mid-dinner, his face turning ashen as his last investment crumbled before his eyes. And that was the night I looked directly at my mother and asked her in front of everyone, "Do you even remember what you said to me the last time we spoke 12 years ago?" The table went silent. My mother's fork clattered against her plate, and I knew in that pause that everything I had built was about to come crashing down. She froze her eyes, narrowing her lips, parting slightly, as if words had abandoned her. My brother shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly wanting to disappear. My sister clutched her glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. But I didn't look at them. My gaze was locked on my mother, waiting. Her voice finally came brittle and sharp. I don't remember. It was years ago. What does it matter now? My laugh cut through the tension like a blade. What does it matter? You told me I was dead to you. You told me never to show my face at another family gathering because I was nothing but shame. Gasps rippled around the table. My sister's glass slipped from her hand and splintered against the floor. My brother muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. My mother paled her hand, trembling, as she reached for her napkin, like it could shield her. "That was the last thing you said to me," I continued, my voice trembling not with weakness, but with rage. "And you wonder why I don't forget. You wonder why I don't forgive. For 12 years I carried those words like a knife lodged in my chest. And now you sit here in my home, eating my food, pretending like none of it happened." My sister whispered, "Mom, is that true?" But my mother refused to meet her eyes. The silence was heavy, suffocating. And in that silence, I realized this was the moment. The moment I had been waiting for, the climax of all my pain, all my anger, all the years I had been silenced. So I stood up steady and deliberate. "You want to know why you're here now? Why suddenly, after 12 years of absence, you find yourself at my table? It's because I let you, because I wanted you to see what I became without you, and because I wanted you to understand that you don't get to erase the past. You don't get to crawl back when it's convenient." My brother tried to interrupt, mumbling something about family, about second chances, but I raised my hand to silence him. "No, you don't get to lecture me about family, not when you were all too happy to let me rot in silence. Not when every single one of you chose to forget me until it suited you to remember." Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I wanted them to see my strength, not my sorrow. My mother finally spoke, her voice cracking, the mask slipping. "We made mistakes. We were harsh. But we're here now, aren't we? Isn't that enough?" "Enough!" I whispered, shaking my head. No, it's not enough. Because you're not here for me. You're here because you need me. Because your lives are falling apart, and you think I'll fix them. My sister wants money, my brother wants connections, and you? I looked straight into my mother's eyes. You just want somewhere to die without being alone. Her face twisted fury and shame colliding in her expression. My sister sobbed openly now. My brother pushed his chair back and muttered curses under his breath, but I didn't care. I had finally ripped the truth from the shadows and laid it bare under the harsh light of reality. I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp enough to cut. I survived without you. I thrived without you, and I don't need you. The question is, can you say the same? The room erupted into chaos. My sister shouting at my mother, my brother storming out, my mother clutching her chest like the words were daggers. And I just stood there, calm, steady, watching the empire of lies they had built collapse in real time. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten one. I wasn't the outcast. I wasn't powerless. I was in control, and they finally knew it. My mother slumped back in her chair, her face pale as the porcelain plates littering the table. Her hand trembled, pressing against her chest, but I didn't move. I didn't reach for her. For years, I had begged for her touch, her comfort, her approval, and she had given me nothing but silence and scorn. Now it was her turn to know what it felt like to reach out and be met with nothing. My sister, still crying, turned to me with tear-streaked cheeks. Please don't do this. We're family. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can start over. Her voice cracked with desperation, and for a fleeting second, a part of me wanted to believe her. To believe that maybe deep down she meant it, but then I remembered all those Christmas mornings spent alone, the birthdays, without a single phone call, the hospital nights when I begged for someone to sit beside me and was met with silence. You don't get to start over now, I said softly, though the steel in my tone made her flinch. Not after 12 years. You made your choice then. This? I gestured around the room at the house, the wealth, the success. All of this happened because you left me behind, and you don't get to claim it now. My brother came storming back in from the hallway, his face flushed, his voice shaking with fury. You think you're better than us because you made money? Because you've got some big house? You wouldn't have survived a damn day if it weren't for the family that raised you. I turned slowly to him, meeting his eyes, with a cold calm that seemed to unnerve him more than shouting ever could. The family that raised me also abandoned me. The family that was supposed to protect me decided I was expendable. So tell me, what exactly did you give me that I owe you for? He had no answer. He just glared, his fists clenched his chest, heaving with the weight of everything unsaid. I let the silence stretch, let the truth hang heavy in the air. Then I walked around the table, standing tall as I looked at each of them. My sister broken and desperate. My brother angry and defenseless. My mother trembling, but too proud to beg. You came here thinking I'd still be that little girl who needed you, I said. You thought you could walk back into my life and take from me what you never gave. But you don't understand something. I don't need you anymore. And I never will. My words landed like blows, and I knew then that the final cut had been made. The bond, if it had ever been real, was severed beyond repair. I turned away from them, walking to the wide glass doors that overlooked the city skyline. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, strong, unshaken, resolute. I had spent years wondering if I would ever get this moment, if I would ever have the chance to tell them everything they had done to me. And now that I felt something unexpected.
Relief.
Not joy, not triumph, but a deep exhale that had been stuck inside me for 12 long years. Behind me, I heard my mother whisper my name, almost pleading. My sister's sobs grew louder. My brother cursed under his breath. But I didn't turn around. Instead, I spoke to the glass, to the reflection of the woman I had become. You taught me what it means to be alone. Now you can learn it too. I opened the doors, the night air rushing in cool against my flushed skin. Without another glance at them, I walked out onto the balcony and left them behind, in the wreckage of their own making. That was the night I finally took everything from them. Not their money, not their status, not their pride. Something deeper. I took away their illusion of control, their belief that they could abandon me and still come back when it suited them. I showed them that the girl they had cast aside was gone forever, and in her place stood someone who owed them nothing. For the first time in years, I felt free. The balcony stretched wide, wrapping around the house like open arms, and the city lights glittered below me, tiny stars scattered across the earth instead of the sky. I gripped the railing and breathed in deeply the crisp air filling my lungs, pushing out the last fragments of suffocating tension I had carried all evening. Inside, the muffled chaos continued. My sister crying, my brother pacing, my mother's voice sharp with brittle anger. They were unraveling, and part of me wanted to watch, to stand there calm and untouchable while they tore each other apart the way they once tore me. But another part of me, the part they had never known, the part they couldn't destroy, longed for silence, for peace, for the kind of stillness I had never found when I was with them. When I finally stepped back inside, the room was in disarray. My sister's makeup was streaked down her face, my brother had knocked over a chair, and my mother sat like stone staring at her untouched plate. They looked smaller now, diminished in a way I had never seen before. And I realized something that made my heart twist with both pity and vindication. They weren't powerful. They never had been. Their cruelty, their abandonment, their scorn, those had been masks. And now, stripped bare, all that was left were fragile, broken people who had no one left to blame but themselves. I walked past them slowly, deliberately, my heels clicking against the floor like a gavel striking judgment. "Dinner's over," I said quietly, though my voice carried through the room like thunder. My sister tried to grab my hand as I passed, but I pulled away, her touch burning like acid. My brother muttered something about me being heartless, but I didn't stop. My mother didn't say a word. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to throw at me. At the front door, I paused, my hand on the handle. I turned back to face them one last time. "You'll leave tonight, and you won't come back. Because I've built this life without you, and I won't let you poison it. If you want redemption, you'll have to find it somewhere else. Not here." Their eyes widened in unison, as if the reality had just hit them. My sister sobbed harder. My brother cursed again. My mother finally lifted her chin, as though defiance could still save her. But it was too late. I opened the door, the cool night spilling into the foyer. "Goodbye," I said simply, and then I closed the door on them, sealing their voices, their faces, their shadows out of my home, out of my life. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was mine. Pure, undisturbed, untainted. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't waiting for someone to come back. I wasn't begging for love that would never be given. I wasn't reaching for family, only to be left with empty hands. I was free. That night, I sat on the balcony long after they were gone, watching the city below the steady rhythm of life continuing without pause. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who had been cast out and forgotten, and I whispered to her in my heart, "We made it. We're stronger now, and we'll never beg again." The strange thing about revenge is that people imagine it to be fire burning, consuming, destructive. But mine wasn't fire. It was ice. It was silence. It was closing the door and walking away while they crumbled. And it was enough. I didn't need to ruin their lives with schemes or scandals. Life would do that for them. Their guilt, their fear, their greed, they would eat them alive. And I didn't have to lift another finger. All I had to do was live. And living well, living free, living without them, that was the sharpest blade of all. Weeks passed, and the echo of that night lingered in my home like a shadow I couldn't quite sweep away. The house was quieter now, but it wasn't an empty quiet. It was peaceful, deliberate. I woke each morning to sunlight spilling through my windows, instead of the knot of anxiety I used to feel, wondering if they'd call, if they'd care. And every night, I locked my doors without hesitation, knowing I had finally chosen who could cross my threshold. But life has a cruel way of circling back. My sister was the first to reach out. She left voicemails, tearful apologies wrapped in desperation, begging me to at least listen. "You're the only one I have left," she sobbed in one message. "Please don't shut me out. I made mistakes, but I love you." I deleted every message without listening to the end. Because love isn't words thrown at you when it's convenient. Love is shown in the years when it's hardest, in the moments when no one else is watching. She hadn't loved me when it mattered, and I refused to be her lifeline now. Then came my brother. His tone wasn't sorrowful, it was bitter, angry, demanding. He accused me of turning my back on family, of thinking money made me superior. His voice cracked with resentment, but beneath it, I heard the truth. He was drowning, and he wanted me to throw him a rope. But all I could think of was the rope I had once begged for, and how no one came to pull me from the darkness. I blocked his number, and finally, my mother. She didn't call. She didn't beg. She wrote a letter, her handwriting shaky and uneven, as though the weight of every word dragged across the page. She admitted she had been cruel, stubborn, blinded by her pride. She said she didn't know how to ask for forgiveness, but she feared dying with the silence between us. For days, I left the letter unopened on my desk. Every time I walked by it, my chest tightened with the old ache of wanting her love, her approval, her arms around me. But when I finally read it, something inside me broke, not with pain, but with release. Because I realized the truth I had chased all these years. Even if she said the words, even if she admitted the wrong, it wouldn't erase the scars. The child in me still longed for her love, but the woman in me knew better. Forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for me. And I could choose it or not without ever letting her back into my life. So I wrote her back a single line: "I survived without you. I'll continue to." I didn't sign my name. The day I mailed it, a storm rolled over the city, heavy rain pounding the streets. I stood by my window, watching the water blur the skyline, and I thought about cycles, how families repeat their pain, how betrayal breeds betrayal. And I made a vow it ended with me. I would not carry their cruelty forward. I would not pass it on. My revenge had already been served colder and sharper than any of them could have imagined. I had taken back my life, my power, my peace. And in the silence they left behind, I finally heard my own voice again. In the end, it wasn't about punishing them. It was about freeing myself. If you've listened this far, if you've felt even a fragment of my journey in your own heart, then I want to say this to you. Don't waste your life waiting for those who abandoned you to return. Build your own table. Fill it with people who choose you, who show up when it matters, who never make you beg for love. Because family isn't blood. Family is who stands beside you in the storm. If my story touched you, if it made you feel less alone in your own battles, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories from the heart. And tell me in the comments, what does family mean to you?